My name is Jason, and today I'm going to be showing you how I made these twisting lamps on modern ideations. To start things off, I measured 9 1/4 inches all the way down the plank for the base of the tower. And once I finished making all my marks, I'm taking it outside to cut with a circular saw to cut it down to more manageable sizes. And now that it's been cut down to size, I'm taking it over to the table saw to finish up the cuts. But keep in mind, you can continue making the cuts with the circular saw if you don't have a table saw on hand. Now that I finally finished all the cuts, I'm going to drill a hole directly down the center, and that way I can put the wires through there. And once I find the center point of this one, I can use this as a template for the rest of them, so that I don't have to waste time finding the center point on each and every single piece, and that'll save me some time. So now I'm just finding the midpoints on each side, and then drilling right down the center where they intersect. And now that I found that center point, I'm using a pencil to mark it onto the rest of the pieces of wood. And there were a lot of them. Since I wanted this tower to be about 4 feet high, it took me about 27 pieces of wood. And once I'd marked out all the rest of the pieces of wood, I just drilled down the center. So for the top piece where I'm going to be putting the plexiglass and the bulb, I just marked out a 1-inch border around it. And then I drilled holes around the 4 corners to make space for the jigsaw blade. And after that, I went in with the jigsaw and connected the dots. Now I'm just going back and redefining the edges where I drilled. And now moving on to sanding each block. First with the 60 grit, and then moving on to the 360 grit sandpaper. Really focusing on the edges where I made the cuts, so that they can be smooth to the touch. And once I'm finished with that, I'm checking to make sure that the top is squared. So now what I'm going to be doing is taking this leftover piece of plexiglass. And this is actually a leftover from the last build, from the coffee table build. But this piece is actually the exact right height for this one. So it should work perfectly for this build. So now I'm making measurements on the plexiglass. And I'm using a marker to do this, since it's the most visible. And once I finish with the measurements, I'm making several passes with the plexiglass knife before bending and breaking the plexiglass. Also, make sure you make enough passes with the plexiglass knife before breaking it, or else it could break unevenly. And once I finish cutting all the plexiglass, I'm simply test fitting everything to make sure everything fits. And it does, so we're good to move on. So now I'm taking one of the base pieces and attaching it to the top. I'm pre-drilling the 4 corners and then following up with screws. I'm using the drill bit that I used to make the hole as an anchor, so that I have an axis which I can rotate around. Now I'm making the edge of the previous piece of wood flush with the face of the speed square. And I'm using that as a constant distance of rotation. It doesn't really matter what you use as a constant distance, just as long as it's the same all the way through. And when I'm putting in the screws, I'm making sure that the screw heads are beneath the surface or flush, so that it doesn't interfere with the next piece of wood. And once you finish all the pieces, it should look something like this. Now I'm taking a lamp power cord that I purchased off of Amazon. I'm twisting the exposed wires together so that they don't get caught up in anything, and then I'm fishing it down the center. So that I could turn the light on and off when I wanted to, I purchased an inline switch off of Amazon, and this was really easy to set up. I removed the screws to open up the switch. And then I went down the wire to find the appropriate length I wanted to put the switch. And once I'd found it, I cut it. I split it apart and then exposed the wires underneath. And for this top wire here, you can see I have a little bit too much. So I'm cutting it down to size, exposing the wire, and then wrapping it around the screw. And to make that a little bit easier, I'm actually putting a little bit of a hook into the wire so that it can wrap around easier. Once I have it on, I'm tightening down the screw. I'm repeating the same process for the other set of wires. And then for the two bottom wires, I'm wrapping them together and then covering it with electrical tape. And then I'm cutting the other top wire to size. And I'm going to be wrapping it around the screw clockwise, since I'm going to be tightening it clockwise as well. And once I'm done with that, I'm closing it up and then double checking to make sure everything works properly. And for the bottom of the lamp, I'm cutting out an area so that the wire can sit there comfortably without being crimped. And then I'm cutting a board to the same size and screwing it to the bottom. Now I'm going to be using lamp holders. You can actually find these at your local hardware store or on Amazon. And these are really simple to install. All you need to do is attach the wires and then screw it down. And now once we're basically finished, I'm just double checking to make sure that everything works well. And it does. So now we can move on to the light covers. And now I'm taking the pieces of plexiglass that we had cut earlier, and I'm using the 360 grit sandpaper to sand the one side to give it a frosted effect that'll help diffuse the light. And for the other side, I'm just leaving that covered so that it can still have that reflective surface. And once I'd finished the sanding, I applied the Danish oil to the wood. And once the Danish oil had dried, I removed the protective covering off of the plexiglass. And then I lightly sanded the bottom so it could adhere better to the wood. And then I applied the silicone adhesive, using a speed square to make sure that the glass was 90 degrees from the top surface. And that's it. I'm extremely happy with how this project came out. I actually really like the twisting design, so let me know what you think, if you like it as well. Or if there are any future projects you would want to see me build. Just let me know by leaving a comment down below. And be sure to hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with new projects to come. And I'll see you next time on Modern Ideations.